Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Content Marketing Institute and our good friends at Sitecore and Velir. I'm Stephanie Stahl. I'm the Managing Director here at CMI. So happy to have you joining us today. We're going to be talking about the power of content and data, and you're going to get some really great tips on things that are going to help you boost engagement and increase conversions and ultimately achieve real business results, which is what we're all about. Before I introduce our guest speakers today, take a quick look at this slide. I'll point out just a couple of things that I think are most important. One, you can ask a question at any time during the presentation. Look for the Q&A box on your console, put your question there, hit submit, it comes right to us. The other thing is look for that paperclip icon on your console. If you go there, you can download a copy of the slides as well as take along some really great assets with you today. And in about 24 hours or so, we will send you a link to the on-demand version of today's presentation. So if you want to watch again, or if you'd like to recommend it to one of your colleagues, it will be available on demand in about 24 hours or so. Today's guests, I'm so happy to see them both here today. We've got Jacqueline Baxter, who is the Director of Content Strategy at Sitecore. She is joining us from Dublin today. And Jill Grozalsky Roberson, who is the Senior VP of Marketing at Velir. It is so good to see both of you. Welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. Happy to be here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Yes, it's great to see you both. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will see you for a little bit of Q&A when your presentation's done.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. As Stephanie mentioned, we are here to talk about unlocking digital success, the power of content and data, and really talking about how consumer expectations are changing. We as marketers, content creators, and digital leaders are really looking to leverage more data to deliver those tailored experiences and also make data-informed decisions around what content's working, what's moving users through the journey. So hopefully you'll walk away with some best practices and some tips and tricks after this webinar. So as Stephanie mentioned, I'm Jill Grozalsky Roberson, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Velir. Velir is a data-driven experience agency. We specialize in really leveraging insights to drive those informed decisions around how to innovate on your strategies and really raise the bar for digital experiences. We are a proud Sitecore Platinum partner, so I'm thrilled to be joined by Jackie today, and I'll let Jackie introduce herself.
Oh, thank you so much, Jill. Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie, and I'm the Director of Experience Design and Content Strategy at Sitecore. Sitecore is a global software company, and if you want more information about us, there's a whole website which I've put together for your viewing pleasure that we would love for you to visit at sitecore.com. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here with Jill. These are some of my favorite things to talk about. I love helping people make the most of their content and their data to actually action on these business improvements that we're all talking about constantly and trying to action on a daily basis. So without any more information about me, because I'm quite boring actually, let's get into the really good stuff that you came for. I started my career in the before times working in retail and food service. And so here's something that I know about customer expectations. I know that people usually talk to you when they're really happy or when they're really unhappy. And that has been proven out through the course of my career. Customers let us know what they expect. They let us know what they want. They're willing to go out of their way to tell us what they're looking for, what we have provided that works for them, and what we have provided that hasn't worked for them. And as social media has grown, as various review platforms have grown, as everybody has a fairly predictable email address that is quite guessable if you put just a few minutes of thought into it, it's become even easier for customers to give us that feedback on a regular basis. Meeting them where they are and anticipating their needs is something that is become even more essential. I might argue that it's become even more essential since 2020. We all got really good during the pandemic and that immediate aftermath of the pandemic at predicting what customers were going to ask for, how we could meet those needs. As customers became more willing than ever, for example, to interact with self-service models, we saw a huge uptick in that. we saw that they are now more comfortable making decisions with only digital engagement. There used to be a time when they wanted to talk to a person before any decision was made. That time has come and gone. That information is now available to them much more quickly if they're willing to engage with digital-only touch points. And rising to meet that moment has required changing our systems and our workflows. What I think we should do, and this is something that I've been evangelizing for a while, is to allow these moments of change to help us transform how we talk to people. Because if there's one thing that I do think a lot of marketing efforts are missing, it's that. We tend to forget that we're marketing to people. We're talking to human beings, not to segments, not to parts of the customer journey, not to pieces of the funnel, but to people. And building a better customer experience, be that like moment to moment or year to year, it does require understanding who we're communicating with. So keeping in mind that we are talking to people every single moment of every single day is really critical in creating that better customer experience. You can track the evolution of this over time, which I think is pretty interesting. And shout out to Jill who built this. I don't want anybody to think that I did this because I'm not cool enough to build this. Jill did this. If you look at this timeline, these are probably in line with your own memories of how customer expectations have evolved. One thing that I do find really interesting is that nearly all of these are still relevant today, which is very worth keeping in mind. We are building on top of each of these expectations. You don't get to drop one because a new one has come in on top. We have to continue thinking about the customer journey, about personalizing at every touch point, while we're also thinking about AI and data. With each new evolution of customer experience, we have to keep in mind the things that came before it that customers now expect sort of as table stakes. Because our customers expect all of that, they expect that we'll be listening to our NPS scores. They expect that we will be planning the customer journey, that there will be personalization at each touch point, that there will be AI recommendations. That's what makes our job so interesting. That's one of the reasons that I'm always excited to come to the office in the morning and think about how can we make this better, allowing this moment of change again to transform how we talk to people. Because there are some things about this that people are more reluctant to adopt than other things that seem like, no, I don't know, and then become like, wait, where are my personalized recommendations? I bet many of you remember when it seemed creepy for personalization to be like coming in at every moment. It's like, why did that change? I haven't told you anything about me. And now it's like, why didn't that change? I've told you a couple of things about me. Where's my personalized recommendation? So thinking about how we take all of these building blocks and continue to put together a better customer experience every time we have the opportunity is something that we're all getting pretty good at, and it's worth it. Because when you start investing in customer experience and successfully implementing that customer first strategy, you do see that the numbers start to drive higher customer satisfaction, that it reduces customer churn, that it does increase revenue. And because user expectations, are a moving target, it is important to consistently gauge what your audience expects of you and the role that your audience and their expectations play in developing your marketing strategy. Because without doubt or exception, a marketing strategy needs to drive business results. So how do you incorporate customer expectations and business results in order to bring together a digital content strategy that drives them both and makes not only your business successful, but keeps your customers happy and keeps them engaging with your business, keeps building that relationship with your customers? And it starts with what that looks like today. Personalization, I think the first time Jill and I presented on personalization together was like 2018. It's been a minute. We've been talking about this for a long time, and I think we're going to keep talking about this for a long time, because personalization, as time has gone by, even though sometimes I've noticed that it sort of falls to the bottom of the cycle when we're talking about it, it does still tend to surface in those conversations because it's absolutely essential to creating those customer experiences that keep people coming back. There are a ton of statistics out there about this. Personalization is incredibly good for business. 80% of customers say they're more inclined to do business with an organization that personalizes their digital experiences, which makes perfect sense. Personalization makes people feel understood. It makes them feel heard. It helps them move through what they're trying to accomplish more quickly, which makes them feel appreciated, like you have value, like you value their time. Personalization is also appreciated by customers, about 69%, as long as it's based on data they've explicitly shared. And again, I think we've got some slides later. We're going to talk about the importance of first-party data, about like, be effective, but don't be creepy. It's like a balancing act that we've all been engaged in for quite some time. And with all of that said, personalization is still a challenge for most marketing teams. And so that's what we're going to try to do today, is sort of lower that barrier of entry so that you can start using the data that you have to create the personalized experiences that your customers want and drive real business results. The key thing, like honestly, if you only took one thing away from everything I'm going to say, because Jill's going to say a lot of cool stuff, but if you take one thing away from what I'm going to say, I hope it's this. Visitors are looking to build a relationship with you. They want to be in business with a brand that understands them. They want to be in business with someone who gets them, who understands where they're coming from, who they like, and who they trust. And if they're ready, and they're ready to walk away if those expectations aren't met. This statistic was actually a little bit higher than I was expecting. It's been ticking up over the course of the last few years. There's so much choice in the world today. And because there's so much choice and because it's so easy to find an alternative, customers are willing to walk if they're not getting what they want. I don't say that to scare anybody. I say that so that we're all aware of how high the stakes are when we talk about, there's a lot of focus, I think, on net new customers. People are like, oh, we need new customers. It's like, yes, but you also need to keep them once you've got them. Like, how do you continue to build that relationship with them, to build that trust with them? It does require a longer term commitment, which can get bumped. Those sort of longer term commitments often get bumped due to shorter term goals. And so what I hope that Jill and I can convince you of today is that those two things are not mutually exclusive, that you can focus on the long-term effect and impact of your customer experience while also achieving those short-term business goals. It's something that we learned to do, we know how to do. We've been backsliding in the last couple of years. There's a lot of data out there that shows that customers are less satisfied with the brand they're doing business with, as this statistic reflects. It's something that we can kick back into gear, just using that muscle again, get ourselves back to the point of serving both the needs of our business and the needs of our customers.
Yep. And I think it's a great point, Jackie, and just, understanding the history of customer experience. And like you said, we can get back there, right? We can build this muscle again. And what that's going to take is really what we're talking about, right? The blending of content and data to meet these, the moving target of customer expectations. And, I think we as marketers, content creators, digital leaders, it's not just about meeting customer expectations, but exceeding them. And it is work, right? It is, day in, day out, keeping pulse, measuring. And so, as you mentioned, consumers not just expect personalization today, but they're really demanding it. And this is why there's such a focus for organizations to really seamlessly integrate content and data and bring those things together to make those informed strategies that ultimately drive those high impact customer journeys. And I think so much of it, like you were saying, is about creating a value exchange between brands and consumers, right? So if we are giving up some of our data and we appreciate that personalization, that's the value exchange, right? We're giving that up to receive something in return. And so really thinking about how we create meaningful value, that's going to foster those stronger relationships and, show that investment that, hey, it wasn't just about acquiring you, but, we're putting in the work to maintain that relationship, keep you happy, and ultimately that feeds into that, ongoing loyalty that we're really looking for. And so I think when we talk about this and how we merge or marry content and data, this is where our websites are so critical, right? They're such an essential part of our organization, as you were saying in your intro, right? Just go check it out. It's nothing new. But these are not just sources of information and education. These are touch points for lead nurturing, for data capture, for conversions. I know in Sitecore's recent study on the future of websites, you can see this chart here on the right. And I don't think it's surprising, but 80% of marketers measure success through conversions. What that conversion is going to vary based on the organization, but it's really about, being able to have that moment in time that says, hey, here's something, whether that's a piece of information, I'm signing up, I want to have a further conversation. And so to drive these really critical KPIs around conversion and engagement, time on site, we have to be delivering the right content, right? We need to be data driven. We need to have strong tracking and measurement in place so that we're not, executing kind of like a spray and pray strategy to content and experience. And so having the right data will allow marketers to really get that clear view of what is moving users through the journey, where are we keeping them satisfied, and most importantly, where are those friction points that we then need to change the content, test the content, personalize the content to keep someone in their journey and really fuel that engagement and those conversions that, keep websites as that critical kind of revenue generating, touch point that they are. I think, talking about the data a little bit more, the question on a lot of people's mind is, what data to use to make these informed decisions. And, obviously, and I think we're all aware, we're not faced with the problem of having enough data, right? We all know we're giving away multiple pieces of our data, multiple times during the day as we interact with different websites and different brands. The challenge that we're facing today is really, do we have the right data and can we make sense of it? So years ago, capturing someone's email and just, taking a quick glance at Google Analytics was enough to be data driven and to really move users through a funnel. Now with so much data coming from multiple different touch points and what's being exchanged between consumers and brands, that rising expectation of personalization is putting the pressure on organizations to really bring data together to get this holistic, customer view, that 360 that we're all working towards, and to tie together those behaviors. I always use the cable company example, where if you're not capturing the data, you're forcing someone to start over in their journey. So when I call and I need help with my internet, and the automatic prompts are, will you enter the last four of your social security? So I do. And then when the person comes on the phone, that's the first question that they're asking me. And it's frustrating. It's like, I already told you this. And so when we're thinking about the role that data plays, it is about tying together behaviors from every single interaction. And that's going to inform how those experiences can be tailored and make sure that we are presenting the right content at the right time. But data continues to present a challenge. I think that's kind of our new frontier here that's going to, allow us to build that personalization muscle like we were talking about. It's not that organizations struggle, as we said, with having the right amount or having enough data, but it's about having the right data. And so we can see that 40% of enterprise organizations have inaccurate, incomplete, or unavailable data. And what that means is it's not usable, right? They're not confident in being able to use that data despite having it, because it presents risk if it's not accurate, right? Then we can get to that point of a bad experience sooner if we're not confident in the data that we're using. And not only does having poor data really present a risk to revenue, but not having clean and accurate and actionable data is also that barrier to personalization, which, again, we know is the expectation, but we see here that, 29% of marketers say disconnected data is their top barrier, right? Again, it speaks to that risk and that lack of confidence in using the information, because we just don't know if it's right and if we can make smart decisions off of that. And so when we think about kind of, the holy grail, right, which in my mind is bringing together that digital and data, being able to act on that data in digital experiences, being able to blend or use data and blending content and data, which means using data to understand audience behaviors, as well as understanding content performance in the journey. As our digital experiences remain crucial for driving revenue, there's a focus on websites being really these profitable assets, and we need to activate on these data-driven strategies, not only to keep pulse, right, on the people that we're marketing to, as you said, Jackie. We are talking to actual people. So not only do we need the data to understand who they are, what they want, what's their motivations, but we also need to use that to make informed decisions about how we evolve content to meet their needs, enhancing that overall, return on investment for all of these marketing efforts, and really trying to drive data-driven optimization, right? We should never have a static website. These are living and breathing things that need to evolve alongside both our organizations, but alongside the people that we're interacting with. And so what does that look like, right? Like, a lot of numbers, a lot of, narrative, but what are some of those best practices for unlocking digital success? And so I think, as I mentioned before, it's really important, especially today, we're talking about a website or a collection of websites, but really it's this pivot to a platform. As I mentioned, this is a living and breathing thing that needs to constantly evolve. I think we're all familiar with the time when we would design and build a website, get it out in the wild. It would live there for 3 to 5 years. We'd redo it. Right now, we have everything that we need at our fingertips between the technology, the data, AI, and us as marketers and, digital leaders. We have everything we need to evolve these things on a constant basis and really measure their success, make sure they're dynamic, and allow them to evolve and change over time. And so when we think about, the stat that Jackie talked about in terms of consumers being so willing to leave a brand due to poor customer experience, I think it's helpful to root some of, our conversation in some of those additional stats and expectations, right? We know that 72% of consumers expect immediate service or answers when interacting with a business or brand. I think I can speak for myself, where I am so impatient with when I'm on a website, if it's slow to load, if I can't find something easily, if I need to find the search bar and for some reason I can't, if I click on something and it doesn't work in the way that it's expected, I get very, very frustrated. And with the access to information, this notion of immediacy, right? We are all impatient as consumers, but there's stuff that we as organizations can do to combat that. And so when we're thinking about what we can do from a data perspective, there's a couple of different things. Obviously, we want to be collecting data, and I'll talk in a little bit about how we can bring that together. But in order to get answers to people quickly, what we can do with our data is, of course, personalize, right? We can capture even the basic information around what someone saw before on previous visits, and we can show relevant product recommendations. We can engage in smarter chat responses, and we can use, like I said, browsing history and past interactions to inform those different strategies. That doesn't necessarily require tapping into data that's all the way over here, right? We can use that data that is specifically collected on our website in order to action on personalization and get that running. We can also analyze historical behavior to predict customer needs. As we're maturing in our strategies, we want to be very proactive in the customer journey, where sometimes personalization can be reactive and still effective. Some of the best personalization way to meet customer needs is to be proactive and to look at the way that data trends, or what data trends tell you about, people who do these things oftentimes then do this. And then also thinking about how we automate workflows to direct visitors. And so making sure, because people want information quickly, they want to find it fast, they want it to be easy and seamless, we can use, of course, the navigation of the site and the user experience, but we can also automate workflows to route people to different FAQs, to different information, right? And use sort of a decision model of a sort to be able to do that, and use data to power all of those things. And now I'll pass it over to you, Jackie, to talk about what we can do with the content then.
Oh, my favorite topic. There's a lot that we can do with content. So I've tried to sort of boil it down to be as specific as possible. So I think the number one thing is to give the people what they want. Like, there are numerous places and numerous opportunities, as I said, for customers to get in touch. If you have customer reviews, if you have focus groups, if you have departments within your organization that touch base with customers on a regular basis, asking questions. I mean, honestly, the best way that I have found to improve the customer experience is to ask the customers, like, what are you looking for that we don't provide? Is there something we could have done to make it easier for you? Keeping an eye on your lighthouse scores is another big one. I know that that's not directly related to content, but I'm always aware, especially when I'm designing like multimedia rich pieces that have a lot of like video or a lot of little bits that are going to take a while to load. I want to make sure that it's going to load as quickly as possible so that people don't get frustrated with like, what is this spinning thing that's in the middle of the piece? That seems pretty critical. And if you are going to go to the trouble, which I think you should, of asking the audience and your customers what they're looking for, then you need to be ready to provide that as quickly as possible. Take a look at your SLAs. You know, how long does it take to get something from ideation to launch? Is there a way that you can start to shorten that launch period to make sure that you're getting that information out to the customers as quickly as possible? This is one of the places where AI can be really helpful, using AI and automation to surface that hyper-relevant content. Once you've got it on the website, it may already be there. I think a content audit is a thing that gets forgotten about a lot. People are like, which is totally fair. Nobody likes doing a content audit. It's like moving. Nobody wants to do it any more often than they have to. But a content audit is a really good opportunity to find out what you have that is performing really well that you might be able to repurpose for some of these initiatives. Thinking about those really personalized, frequently asked questions components, the video recommendations, dynamically updating a landing page. There's a number of opportunities to surface that content that you may already have or that you've gone to all the trouble of creating to make sure that you're improving that customer experience. I'll pass it back to Jill to continue talking about what we can do to help our customers and their unique needs.
Thank you, Jackie. And I think you brought up a really good point. It is, you know, I'm touching on, you know, the data in terms of the numbers, right? But I think you're spot on, and we have to talk to customers too. We have to balance that out. Data points that we collect in systems require interpretation. What doesn't require interpretation is when we're talking directly to the customer, we can get very pointed with the questions and they're going to get very pointed with their answers. So that's the best data we can get our hands on. But in terms of kind of the next step, right, we're talking about personalization, and we've kind of hit on this already, but 73% of consumers expect companies to understand their unique needs, highlighting this need for personalization. You know, as Jackie mentioned, when the first time we presented on it together was, you know, lifetimes ago now, but it's still top of mind. We're building that muscle. And I think what's changed, you know, the number of organizations that struggle with personalization, it's still there. What has changed most significantly is the expectation, where it's not just kind of casual personalization. We need to deliver one-to-one personalization. That is the expectation. My name is Jill. I want to see these things. You should know who I am. I want websites to, you know, really cater to me. And it'll be different, you know, for you, Jackie, as you go to the same experience, right? And that's just what we expect. And so one of the ways that we can use data to really power this one-to-one personalization is to unify it. We have been data-driven marketers forever, right? As we talked about, you know, years ago, that meant looking at Google Analytics. Are we, you know, how many visits do we have to the site? How are the sessions looking? Do we have good engagement? That was great. That's really table stakes now, right? Now organizations are progressing in their data maturity to tap into things like behavioral analytics. So we're seeing more and more organizations investing beyond a CRM, but into a CDP, where we have that real-time customer data. We can build personalization off of that and allow personalization to evolve alongside that real-time data. So we're not using something that's inaccurate, and we're able to really act on, you know, in the moment data that we're receiving, and then can deliver personalization on the other side of that. And then really kind of the last step in that journey is unified data. And that's really what it means to be data driven. That's not just data in a CDP and a CRM. It's marrying those things together with all the data that you have in other systems, and not just marketing data, but other business data, right? Do we have customer service data that we need to integrate that we can then, personalize off of on the website? And so this is where we see data warehouses coming into play so that we can marry that real-time data with the historical to craft that whole customer 360, which is ultimately what we want to activate on for that personalization. Again, because not only is it expected, but now it needs to be one-to-one, right? So we can leverage different solutions and bring data together to craft, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that customer 360, and then really allow us to not just personalize, but personalize throughout the full funnel, which I think has been one of the hardest challenge, where most organizations start personalizing at the top of the funnel, right? That's where some of the softer, easier to use metrics are. But as we really get into the meat of especially a long sales cycle for, a B2B organization, we need that unified data to be able to act on it. And then, of course, we need to deliver something on the content side, Jackie, right?
Something. I mean, if you want to. Sure. A nice little extra to throw in on top. I think it's really important, exactly what Jill just said, to think about the customer funnel and how you approach personalization and to really center the customer in that conversation. I find, and this has been true, throughout my career, that a lot of brands start from the principle of what do we want the customer to know, instead of what information would help the customer make a decision. And there's a very fine distinction between those two, and they're not mutually exclusive. But it is, in my experience, much more helpful to center the customer in that discussion and think about where are they most likely to engage? What information can we give them that would help them continue to engage with us, that will convince them that we have their best interests at heart, to really build that relationship with them? And even perhaps more important, I think, is to democratize your data. As Jill said, data warehouses are a huge problem. All the data in the world is no good to you if your team can't access it, understand it, and action on it. There's so much information that is probably available within your organization, and if you asked some of your major departments, hey, what do you think about this? They would say, I didn't even know we had that. Exactly. So making sure that there are dashboards that everyone can see, that you've run training sessions on, this is what the dashboards look like, this is how the pivot tables work, this is how you can see how we segment out what's been performing and what might need to be updated. And if you can, if you haven't already, I highly recommend making the switch as much as possible to first-party data. You've probably already noticed we sort of had the data apocalypse with Google switching off. A lot of platforms have switched off third-party cookies. I think most people are already in the process of moving toward first-party data if they haven't already fully made the switch. But if for some reason you still haven't done it, I highly recommend it. It's time. It's time to make the switch.
Yes, the deadline is here.
The deadline is here. The deadline was yesterday, but the second best time is now. So
exactly. And so I think just going into kind of our last tip, right, we're coming back to what we touched on at the beginning, right, which is the willingness of customers, to switch after a single bad experience. As Jackie mentioned earlier, there is no room for error. Obviously, we pulled these from different sources, but the sentiment is the same and the number is high, right, which we are willing to switch. And, we've all been there, that point of frustration where you want to flip the desk, right? And so from a data perspective, to prevent this, you have to know where that friction lies, right, in the customer journey. And that way you can make those changes proactively. And in order to do that, you need to make sure that you are measuring interactions, right? We're not looking at just vanity metrics. Those are fun to look at when we launch a campaign and we're like, oh my God, we got great visibility. But we need to be talking about what are the digital KPIs? How do those support specific digital goals? And how do those ladder up to business goals? This framework is not innovative. It is not new. We've been working off of this for as long as I've been in digital customer experience, which is longer than I'm willing to admit. But having measurable goals is so important. At Velir, whenever we're doing any sort of website redesign, refresh, even just any optimization or enhancements, if we are talking about making updates to an experience, the first thing that we're talking about is how are we going to measure it? You cannot improve what you are not measuring. And so as Jackie was saying earlier, having dashboards, having data, this measurement plan, having one is the nerve center of all of that, right? We have to define what we're measuring to then further measure it and then to further act on it. And so having the appropriate measurement in place and baselining key metrics around conversion and engagement will allow us to see when those things are slipping. That's an indication of a bad experience or something's not working the way that it should. That then should send off alarms that, hey, there's potential churn coming because of this. Let's act quickly and remediate, and we can use content to do that.
So this is, you've probably seen sort of a theme with the messaging that I've had today, which a lot of it comes back to being as proactive as possible. This is, again, a place where you can use AI, but there's also, there's a company called Tuft and Needle, which I think this is, if you're in America, you've probably heard of them. They sell mattresses.
Yep.
And one of the things that I find so inspirational about them is what they do with reviews, because their goal is to never get the same bad review twice. So they take each review and they celebrate the wins and they look at the problems and they try to solve that problem for the next customer. So someone has brought the issue to their attention and they want that to never be an issue again for anyone else who does business with them. And that's the kind of proactivity that every business in the world should have. To take a look at the friction points. You've probably identified several of them. I know I have a running list, I always did, for various customers and various properties that I engaged with, and start working through them. How can you make it better, quicker for the next person? And smooth that out so it's like the friction point never existed in the first place. Mm-hmm. You can use things like self-service hubs, you can use chatbots. There's a whole bunch of technology that you can bring to help you solve the problem, but all of those are tools. The underlying philosophy should be making this as painless as possible for the customer and for the person that you're trying to reach. You can also bring that sort of hyper-personalized recovery into the process. I know that there's, a lot of places where it's easy to say, like, especially if you're like a B2C company, it's like, okay, cart abandonment is a big one. Mm-hmm. What made them not complete the process? Is it just that they're like me and they're sometimes really indecisive about what color frame they want on the wall? Or is it because something functionally did not work and made them go, I'm not waiting even another second for this process to kick back into gear? Using behavioral segmentation is also something really helpful. But again, all of these are tools. All of these are things that you can use your content to start solving those problems, but the underlying philosophy comes back to people and approach.
And so before we start to wrap it up, I just wanted, to share some real world results. That's hard to say very quick. Real world results. These are things we're not just talking about in theory, they are in practice. And I think very similar to a lot of other strategies around personalization and things like that. There's a level of maturity, right, that we can get to. And so hopefully this kind of highlights some different examples of that. Suncoast Credit Union is a really great example of an organization that recently redesigned their website. I say recently, it was last year. But it serves as a really strong foundation for growth as they have goals around expansion. Obviously, from a functionality perspective, there was a focus on being able to scale, being able to connect and engage a wider audience of users and, get those visitors to become members. And part of that, as Jackie was saying too, it's not just about that net new retention, but it's about retaining, being able to promote different products and services. And this is something that Suncoast has done really well. On their site, part of the launch plan was to deliver personalization. And so there's personalized homepages based on whether folks are existing members of Suncoast Credit Union or not. Right? How they've engaged with the experience also shifts the content and now allows the site to become personalized. There's interactive calculators, of course, that, can be engaged with, and there can be data captured there. But ultimately, from even some simple personalization around product or service intent, like around mortgages, by personalizing content based on past behavior and past interest shown, Suncoast has been able to see an increase in their member applications through that personalized content and CTAs. And also helping, we talked about being able to get answers quickly. What they've also been able to do is reduce call center volume because people are more able to find, or more easily find, I should say, the information that they're looking for, both through the site, redesign, but also through that personalization where they're able to tap into data and say, hey, you've shown interest in this. Now we'll show you this, and be able to answer questions that way. And then just a second quick example before we get to our takeaways is Johnny O. I think this is a classic example, like we were talking about around unifying data and a data warehouse. They were challenged with just so many tools around marketing operations, with e-commerce data and then different email systems and different tools to power A/B testing. There was a lack of integration of this customer data. And so that data was not flowing, right? So it goes back to that stat of that inaccurate, that siloed data. And so being able to work with them to create a customer 360 solution provided much more visibility into very important customer metrics around customer lifetime value, what's the time between a first buy and a rebuy, as well as the return rate of certain products. So being able to understand that behavior, that then informed deeper segmentation, right? So who are the users? How do we segment out folks that have a high average order value? And we can treat those people and message to them differently than somebody who maybe has just come one time or purchases less frequently. And being able to tailor all of that messaging based on behavior across different channels has allowed them to see increases in email click-through rates with personalized emails because of that segmentation, being able to see increase in revenue from that channel, as well as different channels like text messaging, all because we're able to better target that message and really understand customer purchases, being able to break that down and really understand that behavior, what it means to future behavior, and then apply strategies based on that. So just a couple examples, and Jackie, I'll hand it over to you to wrap us up.
Amazing. Oh, I can't believe time flies when you're having fun, but here we are at the end of the presentation. So we've just got a couple of takeaways for you. The biggest one, of course, is that content plus data equals personalization. Content is the engine that powers personalization. Data is what enables you to create personalization that really resonates. All three of these things work together in order to create the customer experience that people really are clamoring for, that's what they're looking for. That's what they're looking for from every website that they engage with, from the smallest all the way up to Amazon.com. Everybody's looking for the same type of personalized experience across all of their buying platforms. So diving in a little bit more specifically, just to talk about a few of the things that we had here. Number one, democratize your data, make sure that you've unified it, make sure that it's accessible, that it's understandable, that you can use it to the best of your ability. Optimize continuously. My team is very, very tired of hearing me say this, but I'm going to keep saying it. It's a website, not a Rembrandt. It's meant to be changed. It's not meant to hang on a wall and be something that is admired for centuries. It is meant to be updated and continuously evolved to make sure that it's meeting the needs of your audience and your business. Identify those key opportunities for personalization. There are going to be those quick wins. There are also going to be things that you need to get into a room with a whiteboard and just fight it out and figure out what exactly those are, especially the deeper you get into the funnel. Start small. Start whenever. Start now. It is sometimes, I think we find we let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And there's no reason not to get started. You have everything you need to get started. You have everything you need to take those first few steps and give yourself the time and the runway to create those more hyper-personalized experiences a little bit further down the road. And as my number one, I've been saying this to a lot of people, so I threw it on the slide at the last minute. Make sure that you're in the problem-solving business, not the personalization business, not the data business, not the AI business, the problem-solving business. There's lots of tools that you can use to help your customers solve their problems, but make sure that that is your focus. But the number one thing you are doing is being helpful and building relationships with your customers. And any tool that you use to get there is a good tool. Any road that you take to get there is a good road. If you're in the problem solving and the customer experience business, you're definitely on the right track. I can't believe it's done. This was so fun. So thank you so much. It's been an
Yes.
absolute pleasure. And if we have any questions, we're happy to take those.
Thank you both. That was a fantastic presentation. I was taking some notes along the way. Um, One of the things I love that you said, Jackie, is, or maybe it was you, Jill. I'm not sure which one of you said it. One of you said that, there's really no room for error, which I love. I often say, we don't get many second chances in this business, in the content and marketing business. So you don't get a lot of second chances. So I love that example you shared about the company who would look at the bad reviews and try to do whatever they can to fix it. So maybe, right? Maybe there's room for second chances, or at least, redeeming yourself. I don't know.
It is interesting because there's a whole case study, I'll see if I can dig it out so that we can share it, but a whole, if not case study, an article that was written about the approach that Tufted Needle takes. And I mean, I don't know if anybody here has ever tried to get rid of a mattress. I moved to England, I moved to a whole other country, and the two things that I could not find anyone to take were my television and my mattress. They were just impossible to unload for a variety of reasons. And so one of the things that Tufted Needle has done is they identified that as being one of the number one pain points. They will actually help you donate it. I know I'm not working for them, I promise. I don't even have one of their mattresses. I just think that the way that they work is really interesting. But what I appreciated about that was that they identified a huge pain point within the industry as a whole and found a way to make it easier for their customers. So it actually is risk-free. If you buy their mattress and you don't like it, they'll help you find someone to give it to if you can't find someone to give it to yourself. So you're not stuck with this, like, not only will we send you another one or give you your money back, we'll help you, find a home for this large thing that is now taking up space in your garage. And that kind of proactivity, that kind of problem solving is what I find so admirable. I think you can get a second chance if you solve the problem that caused you to lose your first chance as quickly as possible, and make sure that you're continually doing, like, throughout the process, that you're continually looking for those opportunities to evolve the customer experience.
Yeah. And I think to that point, Jackie, if you can get the second chance, but man, do you have to work hard for that. And the expectations now, right, are so much higher, where it's like, if you are able to win someone back, their definition of good or great has changed. You just put in all this time, effort, whatever it may look like. So, really trying to mitigate the need to go back to that. But to your point, if you're able to solve a business problem, if you can find a rhythm where you are able to get those folks back, then that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, let's say, effective but not creepy in personalization, how much better have we gotten in this? Because I sometimes still see creepy. I sometimes still see not very effective, but you said you've been talking about it since 2018, the two of you. How much better are we?
I'll go first. I mean, I think we're better. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being we're like way, way better, maybe we're like a 4. We're getting better. I think, as Jackie was saying, like, the technology is there. I think there was a period of really good for a while. I think what we're challenged with now, as we were saying, is now we're almost restarting, or I guess we could say we're maturing, in the sense that, those who have been personalizing in the past and were doing good now have more data to factor in, right? So it's not just simple, if you click this, I'll show you that. Now it's so much more of, well, you went to an event in March, you registered for a webinar in April, you purchased something, I saw you on this site, I know you clicked in here and you filled out this form, and now that's what you personalize off of. Those might have been terrible examples, but anyways, there's so much more customer journey data that we're acting on. So I do think that we've gotten better. I think more organizations have a strong foundation for personalization. And now I just think that we're being challenged with, the next frontier, which is personalizing off of more holistic data, which we've always talked about, right, in our crawl, walk, run. Now we're running and we're starting to sprint. So
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's interesting because I think just to sort of build on that point, it's interesting to put it on a scale because I think part of the problem is that the scale got reset about
Yes.
5 years ago. Because we sort of went from, okay, like I understand why I've gotten this as a lay person. It was fairly easy to understand, like, oh, well, I engaged with like these 4 things on this page, and so they're now showing me a 5th thing that is similar to the 4 things that I've looked at. And now, because all of your data can be sort of circled back at an unexpected time, it's like, how did you know that I was looking at that toothbrush 6 weeks ago? Like,
Right.
where did that come from? And so because of that, I think the scale has been reset. So on the scale of like 2015 to 2022, we're probably at like an 8. On the scale of 2022 to 2025, I think Jill's absolutely right. I think we're at about a 4.
Right. Okay. Great point. Let's see. Kim has a good question here. With the ever-changing market, right? How do you keep pace with these customer expectations? I mean, you just talked about the scale from 22 to 25 and how that's changed. How do we keep pace?
Late nights.
Jackie, you want to go first?
Late nights, lots of coffee.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take a go at it. I do think that a lot of it, at least for me personally, it really does come back to trying to solve a problem. I want to be as helpful as possible at every opportunity. I want to be providing an experience that is useful. I want to be providing content that is findable, that solves a problem that customers are trying to solve. I don't just want to be creating content for the sake of creating content or creating content because I was told that I was supposed to. And so I think resetting how we approach these conversations is really helpful for me because most of what the quickly evolving customer expectations have to do with is wanting a better experience. And those are things we can solve for as long as we center the right pieces of that conversation and don't get sort of wrapped around the axle of, but more. Because I think that happens a lot. Like, if we just produce more, then that will solve the problem. It's like we have to be producing what's the right stuff, not just more stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's important, when we talk about, keeping pace, I just picture other people envisioning, like, we're just like running and chasing customers, like, stop changing, right? We're not having to like make these like holistic grand scale changes to how we deliver experience, from Monday to Tuesday and Tuesday to Wednesday, right? These are like longer term things. And I think it's important to remember, first, as we were talking about before, that the best way to keep pace, to keep pulse, talk to your customers, right? So often we do user or audience research as part of a redesign effort or when we're going to refresh something, and then years will go by before we have an honest conversation. We on Jackie's CX timeline, NPS is the thing. NPS is a yes/no metric. Can we get better, right? Deeper conversations than that. And so I think it's important to to keep pace. It's important to talk to your customers. It's also important to remember that even those of us that do this work, we're the consumers too, right? We can bring our perspective of, this was really frustrating. I absolutely love this. It's like you said, Jackie, you brought up tough to needle. Like, that's something you saw out in the wild. And that, gives you a really good perspective and thought on, how can I use that? Right. So I think, being able to keep pace, we have to think about what what we like, don't like, expect. How do we apply that to then be in the problem solving business?
Fantastic. Okay, let's squeeze in one more question here. Got to talk about AI a little bit, right? And impact on these kinds of strategies. How's it going to impact it?
Oh, so many ways. Yeah, it's it's not a day that ends in Y if we're not talking about AI. I think AI is an assistant, right? It is helpful, very similar to technology being an enabler. Like, AI will certainly help, I think, more so on the data side, right? The ability to leverage AI to make sense of large data sets, to be able to layer on predictive analytics, apply machine learning to suss out those patterns of behavior that we can then act on. I think the AI obviously is already does play such a significant role there. AI also that helps with some of the content generation, of course, and being able to power that. But at the end of the day, we as marketers are still the ones that understand the context, right? We understand the business goals. And so AI obviously is going to help streamline a lot, I think uncover a lot of insights that then allow us as marketers to make better decisions, but ultimately it's still our call.
Yeah, I agree. I think I spend a lot more time than I'm super comfortable admitting, thinking about the responsibility that we have to use AI well. I think we're sort of on the line between AI being a tool and it being a toy. I was on a trip recently, and one of my fellow trip mates used ChatGPT to write a poem about our week-long trip, and it was incredibly fun. We all had a really good time. And I think when if you're using AI as a toy, then there's a lot fewer guardrails, and you don't have to think as much about like where you're integrating it into the process. When you're using it as a tool, then I do think that we as the users, as the human beings in the conversation, we have a real responsibility to think about how are those models trained? How are we using them? Where do they fit into our cycles? How are we disclosing that we use AI to our customers? Where do you put that? It can't just be like a generic disclaimer, like we use AI to do some stuff on our website. Like if someone's talking to an AI chatbot, we need to be transparent about that, because people, I don't think, mind interacting with new technology platforms. They mind feeling like they've been tricked into doing it. So how do we responsibly use it? When it's a tool, it needs guardrails and guidelines. So that's something I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Excellent.
Well said.
Well, thank you both for so much great advice. Folks, if we did not have time to answer your question today, no worries. We will share any questions with these two so that we can get answers back to you. We thank you for them. Please join us over at the contentmarketinginstitute.com for more on these topics. And we'd also love to see you in person, in real life, at Content Marketing World a little later in the year. The dates are there in September. You can go to our website to learn more. Our team is building an amazing agenda for you all. So we hope to see you in sunny San Diego. Ladies, thanks again. This has been a really, really helpful presentation today. Reminder, folks, that we will send you a link to the on-demand version tomorrow. It'll be waiting for you in your inbox if you'd like to watch again. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.